So as I've talked about before and even today, you know, a huge part of the reason why Republicans won is because of media environment. Democrats have basically nothing to say and no message to offer except the promise of the status quo continuing. Meanwhile, Donald Trump is charismatic and comes across as a lot more disruptive, so people project onto him any hope they have of the system changing. If you believe Donald Trump will deport all the immigrants and you like that, then you like him for that. If you are an immigrant and you like Donald Trump, you probably believe he only wants to deport the bad immigrants. You know, it's like the information environment is bad, and for that reason, people just project whatever they want onto him. So kind of not really like not a good environment to be informing people, I guess.
20 days after the Trump campaign rally at Madison Square Garden, the president-elect returned there for a UFC event this weekend. He entered to a hero's welcome and to something of a reunion. Beside him, UFC President Dana White, who spoke at the Republican National Convention. Behind them, House Speaker Mike Johnson. About a minute later, he exchanged a hug and handshake with Joe Rogan, who helped call the fight and who hosted Trump on his podcast before the election and endorsed him. Also in attendance,
look at my independent media, dog. Look at all the independence I'm getting in my media, dog.
Elon Musk, Kid Rock, and cabinet picks Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard. Donnie O'Sullivan was outside the garden.
Are you guys excited for tonight?
Of course, bro. Chandler knocking out Oliveira in the second round. Mark my words. Bow, 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 bow.
How? We are here at Madison Square Garden for the UFC with special guest President-elect Donald J. Trump. And we are speaking to some of the young men who helped get Trump elected.
Saving our country. I don't got no taxes on my tips now. So thank you, Donald Trump. Love you, Pookie.
You guys both vote for Trump?
Of course.
Yeah?
Of course, man. I've been working at the same restaurant for 4 years. I've been a waiter, I've been a busser, I've been a bar back. You know, I just don't, all the taxes that, can I curse? No, I'm not.
Oh, curse as much as you would.
They you up, man.
Well, I mean, where did you get most of your news and information?
Most of it through...
I know it's not CNN, which is, that's why I'm here.
Actually,
I want to hear.
Actually, most of the information I got was from Joe Rogan.
Joe Rogan?
Joe Rogan.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yorp. God save us all. I will never not despise the Democrats for what they've done. Kamala Harris not going on Joe Rogan because she didn't want them to ask her about her record on weed. That's it? That's crazy. Like you want to lead the most powerful nation in the world and you don't have the charismatic chops to manage a minefield like that? Yeah, remember, Bernie got endorsed by Joe Rogan. Now, Vosh, realistically, that whole culture was lost to her before the race began. Yeah, but that's also Democrats' fault. That's Biden's fault in part for running again. So we didn't have a primary. So Democrats didn't have the opportunity to showcase their message to the country. But also, even if they had a primary, their message just would have been perpetuating the status quo. No one likes the status quo. No one wakes up and gets involved in politics because they're excited to continue the status quo. Nobody gets out of bed and goes and educates themselves politically and then is fired up on the energy of let's maintain the status quo. Are these people motivated principally by hate? Maybe they are hateful. I don't want to make any assumptions. I don't know. My argument, like, it seems to me, just a guess, just like an off-the-cuff guess, that they are in an information environment where they are just being supplied positive news about Trump and no or negative news about Kamala Harris. Like, maybe the bigotry comes along with it, but it seems to me like this isn't a product of them being like bigots first. It's a product of the information environment supplying them with information that led them down this road. And a lot of you guys would have done the same damn thing. People are really susceptible to their environments.
Being a legend, man.
Yeah.
But mostly like social media. If you want to be fully honest, like social media.
Yeah.
That's
TikTok?
Yeah, usually that's what everything spreads around, man.
Yeah, and also keep in mind, Democrats don't think that you should reach out to people through these mediums. That, like, literally just, they flat out refuse to. Democrats listen to fail consultants from, Hillary Clinton's campaign or whatever, who tell them, like, no, people love watching NBC. People would love to go and watch NBC for your, big campaign drops.
TikTok's everywhere, man.
I don't watch a lot of mainstream stuff.
Yeah, where'd you get your news?
Like Reddit.
Yeah.
A lot of podcasting.
Yeah, like who?
Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
Do you think it was a mistake for Harris not to go on Joe Rogan, or do you think?
Probably. Honestly, I think like a long conversational talk is better than a debate.
Right.
Honestly, you can see how a person actually interacts.
Yeah.
They're cultists. They're regular people. Imagine if it was like 1973 and one of the two parties running refused to present information through any medium other than newspaper. That's literally what we're talking about. That's the level of incompetence we're talking about here. After Nixon and JFK, after into the 70s, and they're still like, well, no, actually, we'll talk to people through the newspaper. That's what people care about, you know? They're a whole generation behind in media. Of course shit like this isn't going to happen. It's just average dudes. I'm not saying they're not like bad or whatever. Maybe they're all Hitler. I don't know. But like the Democrat, it's like, what other outcome do you expect of this environment?
I think Trump's good at interacting. Oh no, he doesn't need a script.
You're a New Yorker?
Yes, born and raised.
Nice.
Brooklyn, New York.
Right.
From the hood.
Did you ever consider voting for Harris?
I actually voted for Obama.
You did?
Yeah, that was the last time I ever voted for somebody that's not Trump.
Wait, how old are you? You voted in 2012? So you're at minimum 30? How old? I assumed you were like 18.
Yeah,
So what changed?
my level of thinking, me not thinking that the police are above me and white men are above me, and I'm all good about.
You no longer believe in white supremacy or police. Okay.
Like, yo, we can learn about history and all that stuff, but don't tell me or don't try to put
He's
it
talking about the bigotry of low expectations.
in a way that it's like our country is racist. Our kids are important, guys, you know, and if we're not teaching them well, if we're not teaching them about credit, if we're not teaching them about how to get a home eventually, and all we're talking about is racism and, you know, trans and gays, which, like I said,
the Republicans won't stop talking about. Kamala Harris didn't talk about it at all, but whatever.
all good. Like, you do what you do. Just don't force it on people. And that's where we're about. Like, as long as you're not forcing it, we're good.
The power.
This dude seems like survivorship bias personified. He hasn't survived anything. He's still in the hood. It's literally just like information environment.
Of the alliance between Trump and the UFC was on full display here in Madison Square Garden.
The sound in this room is so loud in here. It is so loud.
Trump was flanked by Elon Musk, Kid Rock, House Speaker Mike Johnson, and some of his new cabinet picks, including RFK Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard, as he made his way.
Not to mention the Saudi prince who manages their $1 trillion sovereign fund. Just nothing but real men of the people there, you know? He has an entire captive audience in UFC. I mean, again, I genuinely believe that if Bernie Sanders had turned up to a UFC match in 2016, they would have lost their rocker. I firmly believe this.
Way into the arena, Trump embraced UFC commentator and the world's most famous podcaster, Joe Rogan, who'd endorsed him after Trump appeared on his podcast.
I'm joined now by Donny O'Sullivan, our senior data reporter, Harry Enton, Politico's Meredith McGraw. Do you think that Donny, were the people at the UFC match more excited to see Trump or the fight, you think?
Everybody we spoke to were there to see the fight. However, every single person we spoke to, all of whom were young men, were very excited to see Trump. So there was nobody there who was not a Trump supporter, at least of the dozen or so people
And Harry,
we spoke to.
walk us through the numbers, how they've changed since 2022.
It is unbelievable. You know, there's sometimes I look at data points and go, whoa! And this is one of those points, because take a look at men under the age of 25. Compare how Donald Trump did 4 years ago versus how he did this past election cycle. 4 years ago, he lost men under the age of 25 by 20 points.
Yep.
Look at that data now. Donald Trump won him by 2. I went all the way back into the record archives. You know I love going through...
Thank you, Dems. In 2020, the pandemic had just begun, and young men all over everyone really, was in lockdown. Trump's incompetence was on full display. The country was spiraling down. The instability contributed to a feeling that we needed a change. And then what happens in 2024? Well, Joe Biden runs again, despite having like incredibly low polling numbers and internal data showing he's going to get blown out by Donald Trump. And then when he finally does get convinced by Nancy Pelosi to drop out, he endorses Kamala Harris so that they don't have an open convention. So they instantly run with her. And so she's like tainted by her association with the establishment, with the incumbent.
Those spreadsheets you sometimes go
Your
through.
office is in the record archives.
That's exactly right. Yes, my life is an archive.
They give you an offer?
I know. Who knew? And you have to go all the way back since 2000 to find a Republican candidate who won among men under the age of 25 before Donald Trump. So it was truly a record-setting performance for him. That was George W. Bush back in 2000. He beat Al Gore. You remember that election?
Yes, sure.
Yeah.
Meredith, is it clear to you how much the Trump team is counting on support from young male voters in the court of public opinion during any confirmation battles in the Senate?
Well, certainly during the campaign, they really pushed getting young men's attention, and not just young men, but young people who were just disaffected by traditional media. Trump went on all 4 of the top Spotify podcasts, Joe Rogan, Theo Vaughn, Tucker Carlson, and really engaged with social media platforms and outlets that were getting the eyeballs from young people that they just wouldn't with other traditional media sources. And you've seen how some surrogates are still going on these different podcasts, and they are advocating for some of Trump's cabinet picks. So it's
I sure do wish. I know that, you know, it's not my mouth to God's ear or anything. I sure do wish, though, like, man, I wish anyone listened to me when I said that completely ignoring young men as a political demographic was going to come back to bite the left. Not even just the left like leftists, but the left like every single male hobby space. UFC is an obvious one, but like gaming, like all of it. The Republicans have been, for literally like tens of millions of dollars, being fronted in advertising, collaboration, and trying to work with these people. And meanwhile, on the Democrats' side, nothing. Call Me Daddy was the only podcast Kamala Harris did, and its audience is exclusively women. Yeah, it's pretty fucked up. Genuinely, it's insane. It is insane. She could have gone on Joe Rogan, but she's an inauthentic piece of shit, so she probably would have done poorly there anyway. They even turned fitness into a right-wing thing. That process has been happening for a while, but yeah, it's just Democrats don't offer anyone to get anything to get anyone excited over. Fish keeping YouTuber promote Trump fish keeping. It's like everyone. They're only going to get louder over time. Why did the Republicans spend so much in the anti-trans ads if the main reason people voted red was the economy? I still think that it mainly wasn't the trans issue. I really don't think so. They spent so much money on anti-trans advertising, and it still wasn't one of the main reasons that people came out, like overwhelmingly so, you know? But, you know, they're covering their bases. Why has the left become so terrible at cultural issues all of a sudden? For one, it's not the left. We're talking about Democrats. But for two, Democrats haven't done anything in decades. Democrats have done nothing to address what people want or what people need at all. Obama won in a sweep because people were sick of Republicans after 2 terms of George Bush, and also Obama is an exceptionally charismatic person. But ultimately, like, his hollow hope and change rhetoric only hastened our need for real populist messaging which was met and then ignored with Bernie Sanders. But Democrats don't offer anything except the continuation of the status quo. Republicans want to ruin the status quo and make things worse, sure, but at least it's a message. But yeah, the Dems have ignored men. The Dems have ignored Hispanic people too, which is a particularly insane. I think it's because a bunch of their consultants are you have like Hillary Clinton. Where's Hillary Clinton from? New York. You have Obama staffers. Where's he from? Chicago. I mean, not from Chicago, but you know what I mean. You have Elizabeth Warren staffers who are from, why am I blanking right now? It's not Massachusetts. It is Massachusetts. Oh, it's okay. It is. Yeah. So you have, and I know I'm painting with a broad brush here. You have staffers from these campaigns who have, we know for a fact, had a huge influence in DNC running. Guess what the racial demographics of these neighborhoods are? Not a lot of Hispanics. No, I mean it. I think it really is that simple. The Democrats are still locked in like a black-white racial dynamic. I know New York has everyone in it, but the rich parts of New York where people like Hillary Clinton live, where their friends are, where they go to their brunches, not so much. It's probably all white, and they think of like racial minority politics as black people, you know? You don't see Democrats engage that much with Hispanic or Asian cultural issues. They really don't. And Bernie was popular with Hispanics. He was massively popular with Hispanics, yeah. He did really well with them. 2016 to 2020 presidential election shift by party. See how all this area down here shifted more to the right, more towards Republicans? See? All these deep south of Texas? Guess where the Hispanics are? Obviously. It literally like a 1-to-1 map right here. And now, look where Texas went in the 2020 presidential primary for Democrats. Green is Sanders, pink is Biden. Look where he did well. It's crazy. Do you think it has to do with Latino communities having more experience with real socialists? They know what the Democrats are rejecting? No, I really genuinely think it's just that people like vibes and the Democrats' vibes are repugnant. We say that Trump's vibes are bad because we actually watch Trump speak and we follow policy, so we know what his policies will do. If all the information you're getting are just from like TikTok clips or whatever, or like Joe Rogan anecdotes, then all you hear is funny stories about Trump, wacky things he's done. He's interesting, he's funny, he's engaged, he's charismatic, he's not part of the establishment. And in a social sense, he's not in terms of like civility or the way he carries himself. He doesn't adhere to like those standards. What tidbits could one get of Kamala Harris that would make them feel similarly if all they got their news from was social media, podcasts, TikTok, whatever? Think. What would you hear? What anecdote would someone share about Kamala Harris? Just think about anything. Yeah, you'd get some like coconut jokes. She laughs funny. Okay. Just her laughing, basically. There's not much, is there? I'll say it like this, folks, okay? You all know where my political allegiances are. You know what I believe in. I'm still making Trump jokes. He's been in the public eye for 8 years. It's still funny. It's still funny to make jokes about and of him. Are there any funny jokes you can think of right now that haven't been played out to death about Kamala Harris? Anything to say at all? Or is she just another empty shell? Just another empty politician, a nothing person who stepped forward and was told by consultants to say this and say that and do this and do that. Bernie also has endless memes. That's true, because Bernie also comes across as authentic, 100%. The problem is she's boring, and her vibes are awful, because she comes across as inauthentic. And people read that easier. Listen, knowledge of what policies will destroy the country, you need an education for that. Reading vibes, that comes for free with this. The ability to determine whether a person is being authentic, that comes free. You get that for free. And that's why in 2028, it can't be Buttigieg. It can't be Gavin Newsom. It doesn't matter how bloodthirsty they are or how good they are at debate. They're all the same damn person. They all talk the same.
In terms of the court of public opinion that you're talking about, it still plays a big role in Trump's support and the support for this movement that he's built.
And Donnie, also where they're getting information, I saw the study from Pew Research Center, 40% or nearly 40% of young Americans get their news from influencers, many of whom lean to the
That's
right.
You guys.
That certainly, I mean, it shaped the way a lot of folks.
Absolutely, yeah. And look, this is the thing. So 40% of young men are getting their news and information, as you heard a lot of the guys in that piece there, not from you or me, Anderson Cooper, or even...
thanks for looking in my direction.
Even you, Harry.
I know.
But I think what's really important, what's hard to get our head around maybe for folks who are used to just regular politics, is that a lot of these influencers, even Joe Rogan, don't necessarily fall into the Republican Democrat bucket. And a lot of...
Who do you want to win the Dem nominee in 2028? Right now, I think there is literally no one who could do it. I think that right now the Democrats would lose to an unconstitutionally positioned third-term Trump or to J.D. Vance. I think that they would get blown out by anyone. The only ways that could change would be better candidates stepping forward, real populists who represent the people and who understand how to navigate the modern media environment. The whole DNC would have to change, by the way, not just one politician. And if the entire economy collapses. Did you hear him meow? He meowed really loud. Why not AOC? For like 50,000 different reasons.
A lot of times they can be conservative here, but very liberal here.
Well, I'm going to say it makes them more interesting, frankly.
Absolutely, yeah. Mm-hmm. And so even... there's been a lot of talk of people saying, well, the left needs their version of a Joe Rogan. Mm-hmm. And I think
that's a stupid thing to say, by the way. The left doesn't need their own version of Joe Rogan. You can't just create that out of whole cloth. You've rejected the entire media space. You know what I mean? That would be like the Democrats only put out news through the newspaper, and then they realize that they're losing because Republicans are like communicating through television, which like 90% of people are watching. And then the left's response to that is, well, we need to invent a new TV, a left TV. No, you don't. You've rejected the entire framework. You're not even in the medium. You know, like you can't just create another Joe Rogan, the single largest podcaster in the world. There are other lefty podcasters. They get like no attention. Like you're not even in the damn space. And people like Joe Rogan and Theo Von or whatever else are not ideologically partisan. They follow the money. Okay. Joe Rogan is a prissy little bitch who lied about COVID while, sanitizing his own office fastidiously. If the money was there, if it was incentivized for him to lean left, he would, okay? Big egos on all people in media. Like what I said with Cenk Uygur earlier, okay? It's not just making a new guy. You have to engage with the space as it exists. And that means making concessions, and that means being aggressive, and that means being willing to respect the space for its size, even if it's not something you're necessarily a part of.
I think it was Jon Stewart who actually pointed out just last week that I mean, if you actually listen to Joe Rogan,
when like you were a kid and like your mom says, "Let's go buy some cool clothes for you," like that doesn't.
It's not gonna.
My mother didn't buy my clothes. I just want to know. I bought my own. Actually, no, she bought my clothes.
But I do think this is where Democrats are misunderstanding, I think, a bit of this new media landscape. It's like it is not as black and white as folks in Washington, D.C. might like to think it is.
Right. Well, I mean, Harris, how did she? I mean, she underperformed with almost every kind of young person.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, look, I know a lot.
Although we should point out the popular vote count now is actually much closer.
It's much closer. In fact, Donald Trump at this point, I think if you go back since 1824, ranks 44th out of 51 for popular vote victories. He's under 50%.
Right, Biden in 2020.
Did Cooper just shut him down for mentioning Stewart, or am I being conspiratorial? I don't know.
He had a bigger one.
In fact, every single person who won the popular vote had a wider margin than he has. You have to go all the way back since 2000 when Al Gore only won the popular vote by 0.51 percentage points. But look, I know a lot of folks on the left want to blame, young men for Kamala Harris's downfall. But the bottom line is she underperformed with pretty much everyone who was under the age of 25. So if you look and you compare it to how
she underperformed with like literally every demographic. Estimated vote changes in millions across every demographic. Look at that. Overall, under 30, 30 to 44, 45 to 64. Not white, but black, Latino, Asian, other men and women. And then poor people and middle income people. But interestingly, the two demographics for which both Democrats and Republicans turned out in greater numbers, old people and people making $100K a year or more, for which Democrats turned out massively. So for poor people, if you were poor and you voted Democrat before, you ain't here anymore. You have been lost by this media establishment. You feel the hurt from inflation. You hate the status quo. You are not engaged. Republicans are now the party of the working man. Like it or not, it is demographically true. Being wealthier and being more educated means you are more likely to vote Kamala Harris.
Joe Biden did 4 years ago. You can see it there. Joe Biden's margin was 34 points with voters under the age of 25. Kamala Harris's was just 12. That is, again, the weakest performance for voters under the age of 25 for a Democratic candidate since Al Gore back in 2000.
It's also so interesting, Meredith, because, I mean, there's a whole generation of, young people who only know American politics as being centered around Donald Trump. I mean, that's actually kind of an incredible power because older people are sort of comparing it to other times in American history that they've lived through, other presidents. But for a lot of young people, this is all normal.
Well, I think that's why Donald Trump going on so many of these podcasts was such an important strategy for them, because he would go on with
the thing that's up to me. This should not even be thought of as a strategy. This should just be thought of as the norm. Like, if you're running for president, go on media outlets that have a lot of views. Like, is that a strategy? Well, that's been the strategy for all of democracy, the whole history of electing politicians. Engage with media and get people to look at you. That's always been the strategy. They still think of podcasts as this like new experimental thing, this like new wave, but it's not.
Some of these guys and talk for hours, and not really just about politics or policy, but, about pop culture or Trump's past celebrity life, or, Theo Vaughn was talking about cocaine with him and, drug use. And, so he was going off on different tangents, and the Trump campaign really felt like it was good for him to be shown in a different light and be shown more of like this pop culture celebrity side of him that they felt could really appeal in particular to these younger people who are tuning in. A lot of their sources of media now are, like you said, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and places where it's not so focused on the policy, but more on vibes.
Yeah, Meredith McGraw, thank you. Harry Anton, Donny O'Sullivan as well.
I actually think this was a pretty good segment from CNN. You know, I think it was good work done by these journalists, a blanket term. I was trying to think of the more specific one. Reporters. I like Anderson Cooper. Well, he's very handsome. Is it possible they're learning? I'm sorry, do you see Democratic strategists right here? No, you see reporters. They're learning. The problem right now is that even if a super ultra cool populist such and such candidate step forward, the DNC would cripple them. Even if you had someone like Jon Stewart step forward, you know what the Dems would do? They would be like, we're going to lock you out of campaign money unless you follow our instructions. Oh, you want access to the billions of dollars and the multimedia apparatuses that we control? You want access to our media connections, favorable coverage from pundits? You want access to like everything that we do where we hold the keys of power? You don't get that unless you toe the line. And unless you toe the line, like you have to. There's no other choice, and that's why they would just ruin AOC. They would just ruin. We saw how well Bernie did because he was doing primaries. He was raising money through direct donations, not through a PAC. That was his money to use, and he built an apparatus as best as he could through it, and he did the best that he could with the tools that he had. But if he ran, and he went into the general. Don't think he'd be able to do it without the party behind him, and the party would need to change how they operate. Yeah, and I don't know if they will, Thana. Stewart doesn't even want to run. Yeah, I don't think he's going to run. Trump AOC voters. Yeah, this is what I'm talking about, man. What about Sean Fain? He's not a politician. You're just thinking of prominent lefties. That's not what we need.
You like AOC?
Yeah.
Did you vote for her?
Yeah.
How are you feeling about Trump's upcoming presidency, Trump 2?
I voted for him.
Oh, who did you vote for, if I can ask?
For Trump.
Did you vote for AOC?
Yes, I did.
Explain yourself.
She's Spanish, you know, so I'm Spanish too. The United States is not ready for a woman person. Si fuera mi, que porque...
I don't talk about it as much because there's less analysis to do, but I will say, if Kamala Harris was a man, I think she would have won. I still think she would have had all the other problems with her campaign that I've talked about, but there are an enormous number of people who are just like quite sexist. Democrats are not running a woman again.
¿Quién iba a votar? Por Donald Trump.
Oh, really?
Sí.
¿Por qué Donald Trump?
Porque me gusta.
¿Por qué te gusta?
Me gusta como él. La gente está ahora asustado porque los inmigrantes están bastante feos. Lo van a
deparar. Pero tú eres inmigrante.
Tengo mis papeles. Yo vine por la puerta grande.
I want to talk about this more in the future because I think there's really something to hit in it. But I think that one of the biggest one of the biggest legs up Republicans got is the fact that every major city is run by Democrats because cities are hubs of Democratic voters. And every major city in America is a filthy shithole because mayors and they are kowtow to their police unions. They're incredibly weak. They're very rarely populist. They're usually like centrists. You've got homelessness everywhere. You've got like widespread, rampant antisocial behavior. I was in a grocery store recently and a guy had a gigantic dog in there with him and the dog pissed on a chip bag, which I didn't even see until later. Like, no one gives a shit anymore, you know? Why can the Japanese do cities but we can't? Culture, and they actually care about keeping their cities together, more or less. We don't.
¿Conoces AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez,
sí.
La Congresswoman?
Sí.
¿Qué piensas de AOC?
Es buena, me gusta.
Why do you think someone would vote for AOC, who's like as far left as you can get almost?
Because people know more about her, and then, that's how it goes. I don't know much about Kamala Harris. To me, Kamala Harris is a puppet.
A puppet of who?
A puppet for the system.
Why do you think Kamala didn't do as well as Biden did in this area, right where we are now?
Because for black people, we already knew her being a prosecutor, how many black children she put in jail. And we knew her past. She told the world she was a black woman, and she's from India. Not that there's no black people in India, but she's not. Us.
You was prosecuting people for a little bit of marijuana. Now you all in for marijuana. We appreciate realness.
The prices is high. Everything is going up. So what you expect?
All she does is giggle and go on these talk shows. She doesn't talk about issues.
Why did you vote for Biden but not for Kamala?
I'm a registered independent. I make up my own mind.
Remember one thing about why people voted for Trump. They want change.
Yeah, that's largely true. Well, Benjamin, I don't have a problem with people mocking these voters because they're wrong and stupid, but at the same time, so are people generally. So, you know, yeah, they're about to get changed. That's sure. That's for sure. Is democracy good? Yeah, Democrats are just horrible at it, or I should say, liberals are. Neoliberals are. There was a past where liberals were better at politics. You know, FDR. They are unanimous in their hatred for me, and I welcome their hatred. Like there was a point in time where liberalism had an activist spark in it, and now it doesn't. After Reagan, liberalism is entirely conceded to the establishment. Anyway, we got to learn this lesson. Otherwise, we're going to lose again. What do you mean we? Like broadly, I guess Americans, but also people left of center. Yeah, Clinton. Loquacious lobotomite. I feel like in the long run, you might be able to make a good case for Clinton being a worse president than George H.W. Bush. You know? I mean, I admit the Iraq War and the war in Afghanistan are a pretty tough act to follow. But Clinton essentially killing the entire like left of center apparatus in this country gives way to everything that's happened afterwards, including what happened during Bush's term, you know? Oh, did I mix up W and HW? I mixed up W and HW. Wait, HW is much better. George H.W. Bush was a monster. And history has forgotten it because one, he was a one-term president, and two, you know, he sounded smarter than George W. Bush. Now, I got it mixed up, yeah. He was a freak. And a goddamn deep state ghoul.